Spectra, so in theory, this sort of team with, the Purgation on Bolorend, these like big hard-hitting attackers, a very fast-paced team, this team should do fairly well into Miees, who is playing just the absolute slowest, like, I'm going to click Faraday Cage, I'm going to click, Eruxial, I'm taking my time, I'm 2 Earths, I'm a Guldur, I'm like Yowler, super slow stuff. So it's going to be on Spectra here to really make sure that they conserve their stamina, they watch out for Mom's Lunch and Marbles, and that they make sure that they're always pushing the pace and sort of pushing Miees away from the value plays that they can make in this game.
Yeah, well said. Miees doing very similar things to like 𝗏𝗃, right? The only exception I'm seeing, he's not working with the Acronox, so perhaps not running things like late Torment on that Yowler. I believe we saw earlier it had things like 𝗬𝗏𝗽𝗶𝗵𝗏, so maybe going for 𝗬𝗏𝗃𝗃 kind of strategy instead of the late Torment, because I don't think there's anything trapping each other in. Perhaps a cage from Mashuk on that second turn, maybe even the Rotor if you tend to run it. But it looks like these guys just keeping things straightforward. The Mashuk game pick up for Miees, but to try to counter that, you do get a Wind Temtem of your own. Spectra picking up the 𝗰𝗶𝗰𝗶. You gotta be a little bit careful because there is a whole lot of toxic Temtems on Miees' side. But alright, rounding it out with the 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶, since there is no fire Temtems to be seen on this team.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting pick. I mean, this is just sort of daring Miees to like throw an uppercut at it and like let the 𝗰𝗰𝗰 get set up. This is just a really interesting lead from Miees here. I would have expected to see, the 𝗬𝗚𝗚𝗏, the 𝗬𝗚𝗚, from Spectra, I mean. The 𝗬𝗚𝗏, the 𝗬𝗚𝗏, the Acronox, these Tems that are, do a lot of upfront damage and also just support the 𝗰𝗰𝗰 in a pretty impressive way. Instead, we're going to see just the standard, 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗏, 𝗏𝗃, 2-wire Mashuk opener. I gotta stress, plus Miees is playing a extremely slow team. Like this is like, we were talking about Matt. Matt's actually like dropped Mashuk from his team. He's dropped 2-wire. He's dropped 𝗧𝗏𝗺 because he's like, I can't keep up with the wins, man. It's lame. So interesting to see Miees running this sort of thing in the tournament. We'll see if Spectra can kind of put together how to punish it. It's going to be a really interesting matchup to watch that way.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe a little bit slower, but he has found a lot of success in today's event. So all the way in the semifinals. So well done nonetheless. I'm curious how he is going against this heavier aggro matchup and get Spectra, of course. And I don't believe the matches that we've seen from Miees, I don't think he's picked up a 2-wire. So I'm not too sure if it's going to be a common factor 2-wire or if it's going to be the splitter trait. If you're a better man, are we thinking common factor just to try and nullify any kind of win techniques the following turn? Or does he rather prefer to have that Wastewater try to do some bigger damage on maybe even both of these Tems?
It's common factor.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen a splitter 2-wire in a tournament in like ever. Maybe like Ali did it once, I think.
Okay.
But much more likely going to see common factor here. I might be wrong, but I think with quad wind weaknesses, you probably want to take away the type chart, and that might be the plan here.
Yeah, I could only agree more. Absolutely right. When you're working for a little bit more of a mid-range team, trying to slow the pace of the game, neglecting any kind of effective strategy, that is most ideal. So let's go ahead and find out for our very first game of the semifinals. The hostile does proc, so nice little 25% increase on the 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗏. Do we get to see the common factor? We haven't seen it proc, but there we go. So just as you said, Ease, common factor applied to every single Temtem, including itself. So no effective damage for the next couple turns. So that means those water cannons aren't going to be that impactful. The tornadoes aren't going to be that crazy. But of course, it does go both ways. At the very least, you do have toxic ticks from things like wastewater. But yeah, interesting turn for the first one.
Yeah, so a little note here. The 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗏 is the fastest Tem on this board. That's actually a sort of a meta call. A lot of people who are playing 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗏 are running a lot of speed on the Chim to outspeed Golzis, to be able to kill them before they move. That actually puts Spectra in a bit of a disadvantage in this matchup, because it doesn't matter if this 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗏 was 0 speed or 500 speed, it was going to outspeed Miees, right? Like that TV investment doesn't actually matter that much in this matchup. So Spectra is playing at a bit of a bulk disadvantage, and something like Perfect Jab Faraday Cage can do a lot of work here against a 𝗬𝗻 that doesn't have that much innate bulk to it.
Yeah, you're right, and that's with the toxic synergy, so maybe he's trying to save 𝗰𝗶 down the road. We'll be swapping in for the rotor, but let's see what Miees has up his sleeve. The Crystal Plume Gatling will be connecting on the 2-wire, virtually 50% out the door, but as you mentioned, the P-Jab coming in. Does that get followed up by the Faraday Cage? It does. So 𝗬𝗻, how much is it going to take? You mentioned it doesn't have too much bulk because all that speed, and almost virtually down. After this one little toxic technique, or toxic tick rather, it's going to be at what, 1.3%? Just any little shot will take the remaining HP of that.
And like, if you're a Spectruhh, like, you got to be careful here. Like, if this 2-wire has Tornado, it probably outspeeds you. And now your Chim's dead, and you didn't really accomplish anything with it. But I don't know if that's going to be what the plan is. You know, Miees may just like try to perfect jab it and play off a swap, maybe get 2-wire out. Because you got to watch out for these wind Tems, because you are like a billion toxics. But this is super interesting. Like, Miees didn't bring that many toxics. He decided to stay in. It's outsped.
Yeah, I was thinking.
And so fast that it outsped the Tornado, so that ends up working out in Spectruh's favor, so good for him.
Yeah, we were mentioning the speed actually does pay dividends here today, but not too bad. It looks like trading 1 for 1. I was almost certain that he was going to swap in 𝗀𝗀𝗇. Well, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? If you're already going to outspeed with the 𝗬𝗻𝗻, you might as well just take 1 for 1 trade. The reactive will be proccing, but at the very least, you do have that 50% reduction in those defenses on the rotor. So things like that Daddy Sock, and I believe that's a nod to Sock 1, right? Or 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶, I believe that's his name.
Yes, the proud PDX top ladder player, not the top, but one of them for sure. Yeah, I believe that is. I'm interested. You know, Miees is not running the Spanish player special, of course. Tres serpientes. That's not on the team today. Probably too many toxics to fit one on, but this is a super interesting matchup now as we see there's no 𝗬𝗻𝗻 left, there's no 2-wire left. So the 𝗰𝗶 is pretty valuable, but Miees is going to try and kind of do some math here with the damage that they can get from perfect jab into clinch. Tough part about being a 𝗬𝗃 here, unless this thing's tireless, which I don't think it is, you really do have to kind of pivot this thing out because its bulk is, it's running out of stamina very quickly to make an impact in this game.
Yeah, at the very least, rotor looks pretty primed to try to deal with the 𝗀𝗀𝗇, so I wouldn't blame Miees to try swapping the rotor this turn, unless you want a final little P-jab, but everything's staying in, so the uppercut applying on the Yowler. It has the diffuser trait, so neglecting the nutrition bar as we've seen in the past, and hey, it looks like he's just staying in to apply one final P-jab before the overexertion. And you know, I take my boards back a little bit on that previous turn. Maybe you don't swap in 𝗀𝗀𝗇 on that Tornado in case it was a Faraday Cage. So that makes a whole lot of sense why 𝗬𝗻𝗻 did stay in, but the comebacker trait paying off on that 𝗀𝗀𝗇 down to just a quarter HP. I think Yowler can survive 2 attacks from 𝗀𝗀𝗇 and the rotor, right? I mean, I'm not too sure because the 𝗧𝗲𝗺𝗃 plus something like a Stone Ball might just be enough without the nutrition bar.
Yeah, without the nutrition bar, 𝗧𝗲𝗺𝗃 plus, say, Goring, for instance, unless Goring was used last turn. Actually, I think it might have been. That'll take down the Yowler almost for sure. And the 𝗬𝗃 is overexerted, so this is a tough turn for Miees. They're going to have to probably pivot out the Yowler, maybe pivot out the 𝗬𝗃, and just take the damage here. So good turn for Spectruhh, for sure.
I think so, and you know, with the Stone Ball, if he does apply it, it does cover virtually all the bases, but goes for the Goring, keeping it straightforward, preserving that stamina, with the 𝗧𝗲𝗺𝗃 coming in. It's still a devastating amount of damage, about just 1/3 remaining, and taking off the... I actually don't recall what he had on the Garunder, but this is why diffuser trait is so impactful in the long term, right? 2 entire turns without that trait. We saw how big of a deal that was with the Yowler, so much so that he had to swamp out, losing a bit of that momentum. So this is exactly what Spectruhh wants, right? He wants you to swamp out. He wants to keep trying to apply pressure, and it doesn't matter who he's going to be connecting with, whether it be Yowler, rotor, or the Garunder. He's still getting solid damage across nonetheless, and this is what we're seeing here right now. Spectruhh a whole lot healthier than his counter opponent, so hey, things are looking rather good, but maybe could be different down the line. We'll see.
And it all just really comes down to you see that the double here is going to take down Gyarander. It all really comes down to the Mashuk overexertion. Like, that 𝗂𝗬 is dead last turn if Miees can just throw a Rushiol at it after swapping in the Gyarander. So instead, the Mashuk is overexerted again, and only one slot can move. And even though it's 3v3 left here, big, I think, advantage heading the way of Spectruhh here so far.
Yeah, I could only agree more, right? 𝗰𝗶𝗰 virtually checking two of those backline Temtems, those heavy water cannon, sharp rains going in for the rotor, and then some heavy tornado / gust. Maybe not running gust because we don't see too many electrics on the team, but maybe just one electric is enough to run gust. You don't always need that electric synergy for the Ultra Prio, but we do know 𝗰𝗶𝗰 pulled back in the first turn, right? So Tornado not online as of right now. Only available is going to be Water Cannon, which is still pretty effective into 𝗂𝗀𝗄 the rotor, or if the Yowler decides to swamp in, which I don't think it would be the best, but Goring coming out first. Let's see how much this Water Cannon might just be doing.
Super notable there. This is bait. It's not Reactive Valve, so it's not going to get the R-Valve proc there, which is like really bad. 𝗰𝗶𝗰 is going to drop below the plethoric range, I believe. Yep, but still can this Rolder still can attack. So like a Tornado, Tornado threatening the Mashuk slot here. It's really tough. Like Spectruhh is doing a pretty good job of just leveraging the speed advantage they have this game to just keep putting pressure on to Miees here.
I think so as well. You know, very respectful or respectable for the side of Miees. He doesn't go with the true meta, right? The reactive on rotor has been virtually on every single team, so trying to switch things up. But I do agree with you, 𝗧𝗵𝗆. I believe a reactive on would have been a lot better for him. You know, the Invigorize, having that stamina consumption reduced for the following couple turns is nice. But one more water cannon does end up taking you down, but might as well throw the tornado while it's online onto the Mashuk, bringing it all the way on Dev's door. And oh, that's where the reactive bio is.
I don't know about that play though there from Spectruhh. Like this Mashuk might overexert itself to death, but this is going to cost him his 𝗰𝗰𝗆 here. Right, 𝗂𝗀𝗄 is going to... Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think he had to go for damage a little bit there.
Now, I mean, the Mashuk is still alive, and the Rolder has no stamina. It's overexerted. So Miees will get to attack, presumably here with one of these Tems at some point. Maybe not, actually, because if Acronox can KO 𝗂𝗀𝗄 with Soil Steam, and next turn the Rolder can KO the Mashuk before it moves, and so Yowler is going to have to do a lot of work pretty much on its own here. Unclear if it can live, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely not. And as you mentioned, Tardy Rush is online for the side of Spectruhh, so any attack should be outspeeding the Mashuk. Maybe Acronox before it goes down to something like a comeback or 𝗂𝗄𝗆. Maybe just a little Sting, try to apply some Toxic Ticks, but here goes the 3-power Goring. Will be absolutely going first, as we mentioned in the past. Let's see what this Arachnite wants to do, or Acronox. I'm always confusing the two. Gonna be protecting itself. Toxin Showers is such a good technique. I always love to see it.
Yeah, and we see the 𝗂𝗄𝗆 being thrown at the Acronox. It's just like so hard for Yowler to kill Acronox, and we do see the concede coming out there. Not exactly where you want your stone walls to be going on your 6 HP overexerted Mashuks.
Let's go ahead for this game number 2.
Yeah, so we see game 2 kind of lining up here. I don't know if I'm just not entirely sold on Miees going back with this this Mashuk here. Like, it doesn't feel super strong into what Spectruh's doing, and Spectruhh looks like they're going to actually try to swap it, like cross up their opener here, which it could be. I think you just go with what works, but we'll see. We'll see what they get up to.
Yeah, we will see indeed. So starting things off with the Rotor. Am I just going with a similar game plan as before, right? Going with the Mashuk. I believe it worked well. Or no, wait. Was it the Mashuk? I think it was.
Yeah. It was Mashuk
and 2-wire
against 𝗏, but we see Gulder instead. Like, this is man, my ace was like, you know what I need to do in game number 2? I need to slow things down, right? Like, this is so slow. But maybe the Guldur is key to Miees' strategy here. We see the Yowler gets banned out. But Spectruhh had a lot of tools to deal with the Yowler, so that's kind of an interesting ban there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back what was that secondary ban for the first game 1, because, you know, if he ended up winning the game 1, he didn't really have to change up the game plan. Of course, now he has on the orange side, so maybe a little bit more tailored to that orange side. Not that it really impacts the whole flow of the game, but perhaps for Spectruhh it does just a tiny little bit, or just the bulkiness, right? The bulkiness of that Yowler is always quite a nuisance to deal with. But you know, to your point, Guldur is just there to eat as much damage as possible. And you know, maybe didn't want to start off with the common factor, because it kind of did not favor him all that well in that first game. The 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶 still did a whole lot of work. And maybe the same could be said about a Rotor with that common factor value. So yeah, I think this Guldur is just for 𝗧𝗲𝗺 spams. That's the only thing I could think about. Just 𝗧𝗲𝗺, maybe harmful lick to expedite the process. But other than that, exactly like you said, slow and steady wins the race. Or at least that's what Miees is hoping for anyways.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting lead from Miees, right? Like, Perfect Jab Toxic Ink is kind of a nice way to sort of just throw damage at all the Tems that aren't Rolder here. I wonder if this is it's Mom's Lunch 2-wire, right? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, interesting indeed. So let's see how these guys want to get the party started for this game number 2. As we said, Rotor 𝗵𝗶𝗆 going head-to-head against our Mashuk and this Guldur. I say it one more time, I'm feeling like a little 𝗧𝗲𝗺 spam. Just virtually with the synergy does apply 50%. Where is he choosing though? Perhaps this 𝗂𝗀𝗃. Going for the Rotor instead.
Yeah, this is like, wow. So by the time Tardy Rush is online, he'll have taken like 30%. But yeah, this is kind of your standard Matt Gia-esque, you know, toxic tick spam, Turby as well. These players like to spread toxic ticks, but oh boy, you know, like, you gotta pick up the pace a little bit here, Miees. Like this, you're about to be 𝗧𝗲𝗺𝗃. You know, your Guldur gonna take a lot, but maybe the Guldur is kind of the key here.
Yeah, perhaps.
One of the things that Miees... Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say perhaps a punching bag one and trying to eat the 𝗧𝗲𝗺𝗃 a whole lot better.
Yeah, so the problem with 2-wire Mashuk into a lot of these teams that are running these kind of bulkier Tems like Rolder, is that you kind of just lose the mathematical game. And in this case, Guldur is just so thick that maybe you can win the math game that way. So we see Goring go out into Mashuk here.
All right, not trying to invest every resource on that Guldur just because it's going to be soaking up so much damage that way. But all right, trying to focus down all the attention on the 𝗂𝗀𝗃. And whoa, why did that harm? Oh, because of the P-Jab. Of course, the harmful lick doing so much damage on Dev's door. Just one more toxic technique or even a P-Jab. I didn't see if it did 7.6% the first time, but any little attack the 𝗂𝗀𝗃 will be brought down. And you know, I think this is a pretty good wall. We were wondering what this pickup was from Miees. We're seeing it here right now. Both of these Temtems being a parry Mashuk and a punching bag Guldur. It's a pretty effective wall, not too much damage going across, and you know, they're not effective into anything, right? Stone Ball is not effective, those hasty lunges are ineffective, so this is tough. I think this is finally where I'm believing in Miees' current team, that he feels like he has a bit of that upper hand. Just kind of like sit back. There's only one toxic Temtem in the Acronog, so just try to sit back, 𝗧𝗲𝗺 with the synergy, Toxic Ink the other one, and little by little, hopefully he gets the job done. But we'll see for him, of course.
Yeah, Miees has done a really good thing this game, which is tricking Spectruhh into thinking it's a good idea to hit the Mashuk. So he's already kind of one step ahead of where he was last game, which Spectruhh was like, no, I'm not going to hit your Mashuk. I'm just going to kill all of its friends. And that is already like a huge difference in sort of how this game's playing out. Is Rolder is hard pressed to kill things here. We'll see what happens. Hasty Lunge coming out.
And okay, little chip damage on the thing. At least it takes away the item there with the diffuser. But the final Uriel closing the chapter on that 𝗂𝗀𝗄𝗃's book. So well done. At least the first Temtem. You wouldn't expect it. You would think the aggro team would get the first kill. But first blood going in the favor of Miees. But the 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝗃 trying to protect the 𝗵𝗂𝗃 for the following turn. Let's take a look what Spectruhh might be bringing out here. The 𝗵𝗶𝗰 would be nice if there was a turn one win technique, but so far there is none for a 𝗵𝗶𝗰. So bringing in the 𝗬𝗵𝗺 only takes only takes neutral damage from these toxic techniques. But we know it's able to dish out some good pain in anything it does, right? Little CPG action. But man, it just doesn't look like it get too much done, right? Maybe a Goring to pop the 𝗵𝗵𝗄𝗃 and then a CPG. I say that, but I know 𝗬𝗵𝗺 is really fast, so it's probably going to be going first.
This is a weird board. Like, the 𝗵𝗂𝗃 is kind of dead. And the Gul'dur is very low on stamina. Wouldn't surprise me to see Miees go to 2-wire here. Like, just bring it in for the Gul'dur, just to get Mom's Lunch in play. Maybe try to get this Rolder to overexert itself and give yourself a little bit of space. And then bring in something like Rolder or even Gul'dur again to sort of fight with this 𝗬𝗵𝗺. Big problem that they're having with Chim is that it's going to outspeed the 𝗵𝗂𝗃 here. So with like a Goring and a CPG, it's a really efficient way to KO the 𝗵𝗂𝗃. Miees just can't overexert again in this game.
Oh, and the Goring does go first, so the CPG, exactly like you mentioned, should be eliminating the 𝗵𝗂𝗃 for this round. So well done, taking one Temtem down as well. It looks like the Gul'dur running out of stamina, so deciding to rest. But that is a big victory on the side of Spectruhh, only because you don't have to deal with any more Uriel spams. He got a couple off, but now the common factor 2-wire making it quite tough. Not that there was any effective damage on either side, but still, it looks like he decided to bring it out. So there's no Uriel spam, but now there's some 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗃 synergies for those toxic ticks as well.
Yeah, look, this play just gets Miees an extra toxic tick worth of damage. Like, if they had swapped in the 2-wire, it would have been more impactful on the stamina, but it would have been less impactful in terms of toxic tick damage. So Spectruhh may feel the need to swap out here. Maybe just doesn't feel the need to swap. Oh, they do? Okay, so no tardy rush. This is sort of one of the downsides of that tardy rush. And we're going to be getting Acronox in instead. Going for the whip. This is very interesting. It's going to actually bring the stamina pretty low on Chim. And do they... No, they're going to hit the Chim itself.
Yeah, with that toxic tick, we'll be under 50%, so another 𝗧𝗵𝗺𝗃 could do the job, but well done for Spectruhh, recognizing that, probably trying to split attacks here, so bringing in the only toxic Temtem he had in the back line, but the refreshing 𝗬𝗶𝗺𝗃, a little bit like we saw in the previous matchup, refreshing 𝗬𝗶𝗺𝗃, recovering that 2-wire HP back up to 80%. So look at the HP differential. It looks like Miees has a whole lot healthier Temtems. I know those one Temtems in the back, specifically 𝗵𝗶𝗰, can change the tide of battles. You do have tornadoes, you do have water cannons for the rotor. We saw how effective that was because it's not reactive vial. So yeah, not over until it's over, of course, but this 𝗵𝗶𝗰 posing a decent threat. That's exactly why Spectruhh preserving it for the bitter end, most likely.
Yeah, this is... it was an interesting swap, right? You lose your tardy rush. This Rolder likely takes 2 hits to kill, though, so maybe that's why they do it. 𝗬𝗵𝗺𝗃 coming out, though, I think anticipating a Feather Gatling here. But Miees actually just swaps out the 2-wire, and it's going to be Rolder, so this is not such a bad board state for Spectruhh. Miees is really content to just rest on his Temps very often. It's kind of an interesting thing here where the Gul'dur is just kind of... it made sense last time because it had refreshing 𝗬𝗶𝗺𝗃, and you wanted to develop those turns. But Gul'dur really is just kind of hanging out here. And it's cost Miees a couple turns that could have been used for pivoting. But it's so interesting to see that he's not doing that. So kind of what is the plan here? And I wonder if it's just to ignore the Acronox now and run it down into the 𝗵𝗏 slot.
I think so. Maybe that's exactly why we saw the 2-wire retreat, just trying to save the 2-wire when it comes down to a 1v1 on the Acronox. But the common factor might be a little bit of a double-edged sword if it comes to that time. but bringing in the Garunder. A little bit scary because we did see the Soil Steam impact that, but this is most likely a thick skin Garunder. Taking virtually no damage, is a little bit 20%, but look at that, covering all his bases. The Soil Steam, you know, that's maybe why he was leaving the Golder back here, or rather in the front line, because he didn't want to swap into his Acrinox, right? You know, the Garunder just hit the board for the first time and already about just a quarter remaining, so this is huge for Spectruhh.
Yeah, it's also honestly a bit of a head scratcher from Miees, right? Like the Rolder probably doesn't die to a double there. I mean, maybe it does, and maybe the play was just to read that the swap was coming out. But if you're worried about Rolder dying there, it's a really interesting board.
You know,
bringing the Garunder in here is kind of weird though, because it is gonna just kind of go down before it gets to make a move.
Yeah, perhaps he wanted to swap it in for the Golder spot, trying to get Piezo Electric Blow a little bit faster online, or, you know, not take too much damage so that it goes online. But perhaps to your point is maybe he was thinking of Water Cannon on the Rotor, so just trying to save as much HP as possible. But here we go, the Soil Steam should be bringing the Garunder down. So now 𝗰𝗶𝗶, easiest threat, you know, easiest way to take down the 𝗰𝗶𝗶 has been eliminated. So that is a mini success for Spectruhh, but the 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶, as it comes in, will be brought down. And, you know, overexerted, but I think that was a proper overexertion, bringing down the game to the final 3 Temtems. Looking at the scoreboard, a lot healthier Temtems, but more impact potential on Spectruh's side, right? I believe we still have those water cannons for the Rotor. I even think Sharp Rain might be online because you use a Tornado and then Sharp Rain comes online, so even that's available to
So the most interesting thing here for me is that, like, it looks like Golder just chilling on the board is actually doing a lot here. Because the 2-wire can now you take advantage of Common Factor. Like, Spectruhh can't hurt this 2-wire fast enough. And with the impact, like, this Acrinox is also kind of frozen up because I believe it either overexerted, or if it hasn't, it will Giga overexert to attack here because of the Mom's Lunch. So now, Common Factor, Faraday Cage is going to do a bunch of damage to this Rolder. Maybe even enough that Follow-Up Tornado can finish it off, and Golder can kind of continue to support that with Toxic Inks on that side. Kind of put Spectruhh in a corner here where all he has left to attack with is this very low stamina Acrinox.
I think so as well. I even say a Faraday Cage with the Toxic Synergy might just take it down. We're going to go ahead and find out. Does it take it into the Toxic Tick realm? 35. So 2 Toxic Ticks will be enough. That is 25%, and it only has 20 remaining. So try and repay a little bit of the damage. Acrinox, as you said, had to rest because if it overexert, that's going to be a whopping amount of damage. So little by little, Miees is looking better and better. You know, I believe the trick to this match was the Mom's Lunch utilization, right? He's been using it so well, you know, neglecting a couple turns from Spectruhh just so he doesn't overexert so impressively, right? So I think that could have changed a lot of the battles, or it was just the Golder sitting on the board since turn 1. He hasn't even considered swapping it out.
Miees has to be a little bit careful here, just because if he doesn't conserve Common Factor, it could lead to the Golder dying, and that's going to be really bad for him. So making sure to take care, I think the Rolder should come in for the 2-wire on this turn. It's going to take a lot of damage, but I think that is probably what you want to do, and then cover the swap. Yeah, so we do see it leave here. And then maybe just going for a Toxic Ink to cover a 𝗰𝗶𝗶 swap in, but it shouldn't swap in, so maybe resting is correct. As we see the Soil Steam, pretty good damage, but Koishin is a very big Tem, and there's that overexertion. Very useful turn there. Rolder rests. It goes down to the tick, and now fire away. It's got that. Golder very likely lives Tornado from here, and a Toxic Ink should wrap it up. So that just kind of brings things to, like, okay, now what does Miees actually do here? Because he needs to make sure he doesn't die.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least,
down,
you could take down the 𝗰𝗶𝗰, right? Because there's no world where the Goldr is going to be going down. So as you mentioned, the Toxic Ink bringing down the 𝗰𝗶𝗰, and now it's just going to be a 2-wire versus the Acronox. This is the one time you wish you didn't have Common Factor, right? He's been working it to perfection this whole time, but in the final moments, you wish you could get those double damage with the Feather Gatling. But it is a 2v1 situation. Acronox with that Mom's Lunch is already running low on the stamina department, so he can't really do all that much, right? I mean, 2-wire is low, but in a 1v1, who do you think takes it, Goldr or Acronox? It kind of gets a little close there.
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting sort of standoff here. So I think that Miees really needs to get Common Factor off here, like off of these Tems. So the play is probably just to bamboozle 2-wire and like let it use Faraday Cage on Acronox. And Spectruhh is so heavily punished. Oh, we see Hologram come out instead. That makes a ton of sense. Just kind of stall out the turn. Acronox rests, 𝗬𝗶𝗴 rests. But now this is kind of a tricky spot for Miees here, is he needs to kind of prage that his 2-wire doesn't just drop to you know, a Soil Steam into a Toxin Shower here. He's got to be a little bit careful.
Yeah, because of that nullification going on. You know, I thought that was a peculiar hologram only because of the Acronox decided to do anything. It probably would have lost something in the neighborhood of like 20% HP or more. So maybe saving the hologram for right now could have been more appropriate. But of course, everything a whole lot easier in hindsight. So maybe he just thought he was going to overexert like that. Well, here we go. The Tornado is not going to be effective damage, just solid neutral damage, bringing it down to about 61%. The Soil Steam, is it going to be enough? 45, almost taking it down. But now, oh, I actually thought Goldr might go for a Bamboozle on the 2-wire to guarantee a Feather Gatling, because maybe Acronox might just be faster without that 3-prio Tornado.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a perplexing play, right? Like, the Acronox now has the KO on the 2-wire with its Sting here, and Goldr is going to be doing the double rest lick maneuver to try and bring it down, which is tough because it puts Toxin Shower in a really good spot for Spectruhh. But we'll see kind of what happens here. Hologram trying to dodge it out again.
You know, I guess that makes sense.
Rest.
Yeah, that does make sense. Just in case he did want to overexert, might as well get the hologram. You go ahead and get it offline, or online rather, the next turn, which is right now as we saw. So just in case he does get protection, which means Tornado is online, but the Sting outspeeds. Oh, it does go down. So as you mentioned, it comes down to a 1v1. Let's see the harmful lick. How much is it doing? Okay, that is half. That is half of that 39% remaining. So I think one more harmful lick, as soon as it recovers some stamina, that should be it. Impressive performance from Miees, but I believe he's going to be tying things up. I say that, but Toxin Showers is still a nuisance. So maybe you just go ahead and stall things out. It depends on the stamina, of course.
Miees is just not reading what's going on here. Right, like this is like you have to rest to enough stamina that Toxin Shower can't do that to you, and so that's kind of interesting here. The Toxin Shower is going to keep chunking, and now, well, Miees better not be throwing a lick here. Okay, so we do see the rest, and now I mean it is tough. Like he has to be able to double attack without overexerting. So now it should be a Toxic Ink or a lick to sort of break the Toxin Shower Bamboozle here. I don't think there's enough damage for it to go down to a single. Yeah, there's the Toxic Ink to break it, and now just coming in with a harmful lick should do it.
Exactly right. So finally figuring out the little puzzle in this endgame. Just virtually 3 turns remaining. As we mentioned, a bit of a slow and steady wins the race. And in this situation, Miees will be taking it home. So well done. Perfectly played As we mentioned before, the 2-wire coming in clutch. Spectruhh trying to think of a line, but you have to hope a Soil Steam just kills at 36%, which we know is a bit of a pipe dream. The Harmful Lick coming in at 17%. We saw how much it did the first time, so it'll do exactly the same the next time. Well played, and we are going to a game 3 situation, guys. So let's head back over to Miees' side and close out our semis.
I wonder if Spectruhh finally just like doesn't defensively swap out and just keeps putting pressure on Miees here. Like, I'm not actually certain that the opener here, the 𝗬𝗏 opener, like giving Miees 2x damage on the double counter pick like this is kind of tough for them, right? And we do see 𝗬𝗪𝗔 come through now. This makes a lot more sense. Spectruhh is just going to start.
I was about to say that. I feel like a 𝗬𝗪𝗔 with the bait gear looking really good against these toxic Temtems, right? He got a whole lot of value from those Urshels nice and early, but with that lovely gear named bait, of course, that will be ignoring all that Urshel damage. And then 𝗬𝗪𝗔 is no slouch itself, right? Packing such a big punch with those crystal bites. You don't really want to throw a hook kick into either direction because of the Mashuk typing, because of the punching bag. So just trying to rely heavily on those crystal techniques. But I'm pretty sure that's all you need to try to take down this Mashuk as early as even turn 2, right? A tornado plus a crystal bite. Follow. Yeah, maybe not, but we'll see.
So Miees isn't like totally dead in the water here. There is actually quite a bit they can do just to kind of soften up the 𝗬𝗪𝗔. Like, there's still perfect jabs that can do a lot of damage to it. Like, perfect jab Harmful Lick is probably like 40%, maybe 45 into a lot of 𝗬𝗪𝗔s. Kind of depends on how bulky Spectruhh is. But you do see the 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶 not being very bulky kind of came back to haunt him in game number 2. So we see no 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶 in this game at all. And okay, we do see the Gerender coming in, so yeah, Spectruh's in an interesting spot. They have 𝗬𝗪𝗔 finally. They decide to bring it on blue side because they weren't worried about being counterpicked with the Earth Tem. So it will be interesting. Like, this is kind of a gut check here for Spectruhh. Like, is Miees just going to ignore my 𝗬𝗪𝗔 and go for my 𝗬𝗏 here? If so, I need to swap. And if they do swap, and Miees just, you know, P-jab Harmful Licks the 𝗬𝗪𝗔, all of a sudden they're falling behind again. So it's kind of a tough spot.
Oh man, you're absolutely right. So the mind game's coming in as early as the opening turn, as they usually tend to do. So swapping in the 𝗬𝗏, not trying to get the perfect jab into Toxic Ink. Instead, let's see where he's targeting. He could have kept things straightforward and all that damage goes on the 𝗂𝗪, but it will be a P-jab on that was the 𝗬𝗏 spot. And okay, he was going for the bigger play, right? He was going for the bigger risk, high reward play. But still catching the 𝗂𝗪 under 50% with that following toxic technique. So not bad. I guess there was no toxic Temtem in the back line. So I guess whichever way you threw it, it made a whole lot of sense. And you know, maybe ignoring the 𝗬𝗪𝗔, I've noticed players do that. They don't want to proc the bait trait just yet, right? You want to try to make sure it uses the stamina first instead of using the stamina with Invigorize, right? So maybe that's what he has in mind as well.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, this 𝗂𝗪 seems like a bit of a big piece to kind of give away this early in the game, but that's exactly what's going to happen here as it goes down to the double P-jab. So the 𝗬𝗪𝗔 is strong, but one of the ways you can deal with a bait 𝗬𝗪𝗔 is kind of what Miees is doing here, right? If bait doesn't activate, you don't get vigorized. If you don't get vigorized, 𝗬𝗪𝗔 starts to run out of gas like very quickly. Now, Miees does have refreshing Diabolo available, so this is a great turn to swap out the Mashuk. But they might just stay in. Like, they might just force Spectruhh to throw attacks at this Mashuk over and over again and just kind of spread the ticks. Get Naruxiel onto this Rolder, you know? Like, get things going that way.
Yeah, I love that because, you know, 𝗬𝗪𝗔 usually relies on Crystal Bite Hook Kick. Crystal Bite Hook Kick to do the majority of that bigger damage. But in the situation he has right now, you can't really rely on a Hook Kick because that's going to be half effective, of course, because of the melee typing on the Mashuk. So 𝗬𝗪𝗔 has to maybe throw a Sharp Sat, which we see here. So Sharp Sat plus the Drill Impact, will that be enough? But it looks like the Mashuk going first, so it does apply that 50% on those toxic ticks. And you know, I think it actually survives. Does it get the Diabolo off? I think it's going to go through.
Yeah, and you see now, so here's the Toxic Kick now, so Bait is active now, but there's no stamina on this Gyalis. Like, it might be able to throw one move without overexerting. Refreshing Diabolo is going to make it difficult, right? Goring and Seabite should bring down this Mashuk still, though. But something else to keep in mind this game is 𝗂𝗬 went down very early for Spectruhh, right? Which means that there's actually no way for Spectruhh to stop the Yowler from healing with Nutrition Bar. So all of a sudden, this Yowler is becoming a much bigger problem, especially as Gyalis starts to run out of stamina. And keep an eye on, in the back, there is also Purgation available on this Gyarander. So Purgation onto the Yowler is definitely a game plan that Miees has available if they get a chance to kind of double bring in Tems like that. So we do see the Mashuk leave. Here it is. Big Yowler.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. A Purgation on the Temtem like Yowler will go a very long way. So because of the Nutrition Bar still be active, you know, I was almost thinking of swapping them, but oh, the Purgation, as you mentioned, does come through. So had to swap in the Yowler to get that big value. And now you have things online like 𝗬𝗓𝗺𝗃𝗃. You have Savage Suplex online. I was almost thinking the 2-Rock there to try to eat the Crystal Bite, but I like this a whole lot better because of the Purgation play, as you mentioned. So let's see, is Yowler able to hold on? Because now a Hook Kick will be neutral damage, and I don't believe that was a Goring, right? I think that was, oh no, I think it was a Goring actually. So okay, does a Hook Kick plus a Drill Impact take a Yowler home? I think the answer might be no. Yowler's just a little bit too much of a thick Temtem.
Tardy Rush is up and available, though. So this is, I think, maybe a bit of a greedy play from Miees, bringing in the Yowler and not bamboozling it. Like, going into... Oh, and there's the swap, though. So they are going to give... He is going to just give Miees this, what'll probably be an Oshidashi here, into the... Oh, it's a swap again. This is super interesting. Lots of pivoting going on here. Both players kind of double clutching, seeing what happened there. The Marble's going to get some value. Both players just rest. This is super interesting. What a strange turn.
Strange turns indeed. I guess that makes sense on the Golder there. And I guess the Gyalis was running out of steam as well. So just a clean rest with some swaps there. But now 𝗂𝗏 has some techniques available to him. But you know, it doesn't have that same vicious impact as previous games. Aquatic Whirlwind does so much damage. But facing off against double Toxic Tems, you know, I say that, but maybe there's actually a world that does some good damage on the Mashuk. Follow that up with a Sharp Stab. Those are 2-3 prior plays. I believe that should be enough for the Mashuk, even though it's half effective.
So the swap play here last turn, this was pretty clearly intended to get Spectruhh to overexert, attacking with the Roller and the Gyalis. And that play didn't exactly work out super well. But this Golder, man, this Golder is carrying. It's dealing so much damage.
Yeah, just like we saw in Game 2, Golder just sitting back, relaxing it up, sitting on the board for the entirety of this Game 2, and now the entirety of this Game 3. I know we're only on turn 6, or maybe not the entirety, right? I think it did swap out eventually. But for most of it, right, maybe like 80% of the time it was on the current board, and we've seen it here today. So now that Aquatic Whirlwind has been used, Yowler feeling a little bit more safe. It looks like Yowler is having to overexert pretty heavily if he wants to invest the resources into Yowler. So a Water Cannon just won't be enough, but is it actually worth it to throw down an attack from Gyalis in the hopes that you take down the Yowler? Because it might be worth overexerting if you could calc the damage to kill here.
I think this is a pretty big 50-50 here. Miees could swap the Yowler out and have the Turok take the Seabite, get overexerted, have the Turok die to Sharp Rain, and then bring Yowler in again.
Oh.
Is that the play? Oh no, it's Water Cannon. Oh, that's not going to be enough.
Oh, the Gyalis rest though. What a good read. So getting some big damage off the Gyalis. And not going to get the comebacker value because Gyalis did end up resting. But the Toxic Tick making it that much closer to 𝗂𝗏's end. But surviving by 2%. Oh, and you know what that means, East. Aquatic Whirlwind back online. I guess you have Garunder, but I think Spectruh's going to cover all his bases. A Crystal Bite into Aquatic Whirlwind. That virtually checks every single Temtem. So this is a little bit of a checkmate move. No matter if you stay in or swap out, you're going to be taking a massive amount of damage. It's trying to just mitigate the worst of the evils, right? Do you preserve the Yowler? Or would you rather have a Piezo Electric Blow user for things like the 𝗵𝗶𝗰𝗸𝗶? I'm not too sure.
This is, oh man, this is really interesting. This is, I think, kind of a greedy play here, assuming the Whirlwind will kill, and it does, so ends up working out. That's really, really good for Spectruhh, as now 𝗬𝗏 can come in. It can definitely threaten the Turok, but Aquatic Whirlwind is down, so I wonder if 𝗬𝗏 will stay. But it looks like a pretty good game for 𝗵𝗆 from this point, and also 𝗬𝗏𝗺, and at the same time, this Gul'dir, these toxic ticks are such a problem. And we'll see. Turok comes in. So this is a very close game. The Turok is going to take a ton of damage from 𝗬𝗏 here, but it can also hit back with a ton of damage into Rolder. And there's no Tardy Rush on this Rolder. It is just kind of hanging out. And it's going to be close.
Yeah, definitely a tighter matchup than the previous two. It looks like these guys know exactly what they wanted to get done in this final game of our semis. But you know, I think the biggest difference maker was this 𝗬𝗏 surviving. If the 𝗬𝗏 did not survive on that 1.7%, then you wouldn't have a dead Yowler with that Aquatic Whirlwind, and you wouldn't have a vicious Water Cannon threatening down the Turok. But proper play from Miees, going to be eating that Water Cannon perfectly well. The Stone Ball, though, checking all the boxes, taking on the Garunder down to 27%, and you know, the same kind of damage doesn't really get applied on the Rotor. I mean, slow and steady it will, but that's still a whole nother turn. Goring goes online, things like Rockfall go online, and this Gyal is feeling a whole lot better about the final two Temtems. Or apologies, there's still the Turok in the back, but now that those final two Temtems staring him down, he doesn't really fear it all that much. You know, with that said, it's still only at like 25%. So, is there a world? No, Gyal is just too fast, right? I think Gyal has this one in the bag, but I don't want to speak too soon.
It's just a good kind of gut check swap here to see if Sharp Stabs or Crystal Blight comes out. And it is going to be Sharp Stabs. So Rocky is going to hang on there. The Goring follow-up, but it's not even half its HP. Toxic Ink. Okay, so now we've got a situation on our hands here. There's the overexertions, and it looks like Turbine should be enough to take out the Rolder, but this is Tardy Rush. So the Goring was committed, so Drill Impact will likely outspeed. So Miees kind of has to juggle things a little bit here, deciding, okay, what am I going to give up? And they do decide to stay in on everything. I don't know, I think this needed to be... Oh, this is a hard commitment into the Turok. That is a tough one for Spectruhh there.
Yeah, perhaps a worthwhile investment, though. You didn't want to get all that damage on the Garunder that now has Piezo Electric Blow online. Or, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, does it have Piezo? It's swapped in. It didn't stay in, so I don't know if it's online. It might just be one more turn, and that actually might be the only turn Spectruhh needs. As you mentioned, Tardy Rush is online, so Goring should be going first. That should be more than enough to take the remaining HP from the Garunder. And then a 𝗵𝗆𝗰𝗆𝗆 versus a Gul'dir. You know, 𝗵𝗆𝗆𝗆 is going to be taking some decent toxic damage, but you know, those tornadoes following it up should be massive. The Water Cannon is just going to be tickling the Gul'dir there, but more importantly is the following turns. It looks like Spectruhh not letting go of this whole series. Gonna be tying things up, or not tying things up, gonna be successful in this endeavor of going all the way to the grand final. So well done, really interesting play. You know, we've seen a lot of aggressive metas or aggressive teams, but it was a nice little change of pace. I know this was a whole lot slower than usual, but it was still really, really intricate gameplay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was a couple of very close decisions that had to be made there. Like, do you go for the 𝗬𝗏𝗺 turn 1 with 𝗵𝗆𝗺𝗵𝗆𝗺? Do you...